It had been a while since Peter Sam had spooked Duncan with Rusty's ghost story, and ever since then he hadn't let it down. "Be careful, Duncan," he'd say, "or the ghost of the old bridge might come back to get you." Duncan tried to ignore it, but it was no good. The other engines teased him about it too, which made it even worse. "I knew you were scared of tunnels, but now fireflies! How timid!" teased Sir Handel. "Timid? Timid!" hissed Duncan. But before he could say anything, Duke cut in. "I wouldn't be teasing him so much if I were you young'uns. May I remind you of the time that you had to use a drain pipe for a funnel, Peter Sam?" Peter Sam gulped. "Or the time that you got overpowered by a steamroller, Sir Handel?" I wasn't overpowered. He just blindsided me," said Sir Handel, who began to stumble on his words. The next day, the thin controller came to the sheds. He had news for the engines. "Due to the bad weather we've been having, the old iron bridge's beams are beginning to rot. I have decided 2 engines are enough for the job, and I have chosen Peter, Sam and Duncan." Duncan's face went pale, while Peter Sam just snickered. "But, sir, can't you have Rusty do it? Maintenance is that type of thing anyway," quivered Duncan. "Rusty is already busy with mending the rest of the track up the line, so I'm afraid you and Peter Sam will have to do it," replied the thin controller as he walked away. Duncan was not looking forward to working on the bridge again, but this only encouraged Peter Sam to tease Duncan even more. When Duncan had to take a train over the bridge, Peter Sam saw his chance. "Careful, Duncan, you don't want to fall off like the engine did all those years ago," chuckled Peter Sam. "Shut it!" snapped Duncan. But all the same, he did feel nervous. He felt better when he began to chuff along the countryside. But then there was trouble. When he was halfway there, he could hear the bridge begin to creak, and then he heard a snap, and the track broke. He dangled dangerously above the water. "Help!" cried Duncan. Peter Sam soon rushed to his aid and pulled him back safely. A few days later, the thin controller came to the sheds to see the engines. "The old iron bridge has been mended thanks to you and Peter Sam, but the workers' trucks have been left there. Duncan, I need you to collect them." "Yes, sir," said Duncan meekly. "Don't tell me you're scared," teased Peter Sam. "I'm not," snapped Duncan. "I'm just cautious." "First you wanted to be an explorer, now you're a cliffhanger. Whatever will you be next?" chuckled Peter Sam. Duncan just ignored him and puffed away, but all the same he couldn't stop thinking about the bridge. "I'm sure it's supernatural now. All these bad things happening to me. First a ghost, now I fall through it. I can't do it," he shivered. "Come on, boy," said his driver. "A job's a job." Duncan really didn't want to. When he reached the bridge, he could see the trucks on the other side and began to cross, but stopped halfway. He looked down at the rushing river below and remembered Rusty's story. "If I cross this bridge again, I'll fall through. It'll never be found again, just like Rusty's ghost," thought Duncan. "Come on, Duncan, the bridge is safe now," boomed his driver. But Duncan had already made up his mind. He reversed back to his shed immediately. "We'll pick up the freight cars," offered Peter Sam's driver. "Since Duncan is such a fraidy cat," chuckled Peter Sam. "But if he doesn't cross it soon," said Peter Sam's fireman. The thing controller will be cross. Now Peter Sam had to take care of Duncan's work as well as his own. He didn't mind the extra work at first, but every day the loads seemed to get heavier and heavier. Finally, Peter Sam was fed up and informed the thing controller. "If you won't cross the old iron bridge, then you must stay here and shunt trucks," he scolded. "I can't have engines that won't do as I'm told." "Sorry, sir," said Duncan sadly. The next morning Peter Sam took Duncan's trucks as usual. He huffed and heaved as he began to approach the bridge. It was a lot of work, and Peter Sam grew tired. When he began to cross the bridge, he burst a safety valve. "We can't go anywhere now," said his fireman. "We'll have to call for help." "Bother!" wheezed Peter Sam. The yard manager spread the news. "Peter Sam has broken down." "We must help him," said Duncan's driver. And Duncan set off immediately, but he began to worry. When he came to the bridge, he crept slowly towards the edge. The bridge creaked, and the river seemed deeper than ever. But then he looked back at Peter Sam. He could tell he was frightened. "I must save my friend," uttered Duncan. So he puffed bravely onto the bridge. The bridge groaned as Duncan inched closer, but he was determined. He puffed on and on until his driver coupled him up to Peter Sam and pulled him to safety. "Thank you," said Peter Sam, "and I'm sorry I teased you. You really are brave, Engine Duncan." "That's all right," replied Duncan. "I was wrong to tease you for your accident on the bridge anyway." Now Duncan is no longer afraid of the old iron bridge, and he loves his journeys more than ever.